Here I'm working on making a copy of the painting of Portrait of Franz Liszt by Friedrich von Amerling. I wanted to try and improve my drawing and painting skills, and working on old masters is a great way to do that. So I'm starting out by making an underdrawing for this. I like to work with proportional dividers and try and figure out the basic outlines, proportions, placements. Sometimes I'll use the Loomis method. I'm not the biggest fan of it, especially if I'm working from a painting itself. It is really nice for a photo or sometimes working from life when you want to work quickly. But when another artist has already figured out all of the proportional challenges from the model, it's nice to just kind of jump in right away and knock in those outlines and then find the shadow shapes. I really liked this painting. I hadn't seen it before. I wasn't really familiar with von Amerling, but in looking for other kind of academic type of painters in the mid to late 1800s, Amerling's pretty interesting. Really nice portraits. Kind of straddles the line between the more popular, almost impressionist works like Sargent, who's super popular now, and more of that French academic and European academic style. This is a fun portrait as well. Not a huge classical music person, but Franz Liszt is considered kind of the first celebrity musician. There was even a whole craze called Listomania, uh, that wasn't topped until the Beatles, basically, with people falling over themselves to go see his performances. So it's kind of fun to instead of painting a celebrity like you see a lot of tutorials, paint a 1800 celebrity. Why not? Either way, it's a nice way to keep up the skills and work on a painting that stood the test of time and see what I can learn from it. So I'm working on the proportions. I'm not the greatest portrait painter or drawer, but you improve by practicing. So that's what I'm doing, trying to get the practice reps in and make the gains in skills. So I've got the basic outline in. Most of my proportions are okay. For a small sketch, it's good enough. I'm not going to spend forever on this. So I'm starting to indicate where the values are on this so I can get a better idea of form and shape. And once I jump in with paint, have a good understanding of where I'm going and what I need to do with my tones and mixing. I'm drawing with a 2 mil lead holder, just HB lead. Easy enough. If I was doing a full-on graphite drawing, I'd use actual pencils, but for an underdrawing, this is nice and simple and easy. I'm working on just Canson canvas paper. I think this is like a 6 by 8. I've just got it taped to a piece of foam on the easel. Super easy for doing practice sketches and work. Doesn't cost a bunch and works very well with oil. So at this point, I'm realizing that I did not get the chin right on this at all. So going back in, making sure I'm getting the actual angles there because List's face is pretty distinctive, especially in this profile view, and really need to get the angle of that chin right to make sure that you have the likeness. Otherwise, it's way too protruding and looks kind of like a caricature. So there we go. That's pretty much the whole hour and 15 minutes of roughing this in, all condensed to about 5 minutes for you. Hope that was fun to watch and inspires you to try your own master copy, find something that's interesting, and you'll learn something from it. All right, so now we're jumping into the whole point of this, actually starting to paint. So especially when I'm not working on a toned canvas ground, I like to get in the background first, so I have some kind of understanding of what the rest of the values in the piece are going to be. Usually I would tone my canvas first. This one was just a quick study, didn't really want to spend the time to do it. I had already started the drawing before I even thought, oh, maybe I should tone this. So choice is up to you. It's certainly easier to work on a toned canvas than on a white canvas. So just knocking in that kind of greenish blue background, not exactly the same as the painting, but close enough for the point of this. So starting to work in larger color shapes in the face, kind of tiling in those colors as I go. A lot of my mixes here are genuine Naples yellow, vermilion hue, lead white, and using a bit of ivory black and cobalt blue to cool things down. Also have some terre verte, and then your normal burnt umber, burnt sienna, a little bit of Rublev green umber. So not a huge palette here, but not a super limited palette like Zorn. I'm still very much a beginner portrait painter, so still figuring out what works for me as far as colors go and what I want on the palette. So with that underdrawing in place, it's much easier, I think, to start and get the rough values locked in. I've already got the face, it's decent. It's I definitely have to refine it, but it's starting to look like a person. So starting to work on the hair here, kind of knock that in as well in just broad brush strokes. And the biggest thing that I'm trying to pay attention to here and learn from is controlling value and tone with the colors that I'm mixing. And that's the biggest thing that I've seen improve my portrait painting and just painting in general is really being laser focused on value. It's really easy, especially with portraits, to get focused on local color and hue shifts, all of those fun things that bring a painting to life, and forget about value and tone, and suddenly you don't have a lifelike painting, you don't have any depth because you've got really interesting hues, but your tones are all really flat. So with this, I'm trying to focus more on those tones than I am on the hues, painting with pretty large brushes to make sure that I don't go in there and start chasing down the really soft transitions that Von Amerling has into the greens and the magentas, but kind of getting those larger local colors and making sure the tones make sense so that I can start to blend them together visually rather than getting very lost in the really highly refined finish that he has here. So now that I've got more context with Liszt's coat and the scarf that he's wearing, as well as the hair put in, I'm starting to make another pass onto the face to kind of get more of the local color, kind of pop the chroma and bring that intensity forward, and also work into some of the smaller areas, like on the cheekbone, there's a pretty pronounced flush. Working on that and trying to pull the definition on the nose, especially the side of the nostril, and really working on the chin. There's a really pronounced shift to green that happens there. There's a really soft blended edge and then shifts to a pretty dark color. And everything on this face is really delicate. There's there's some darks, but none of them are as dark as you think they are. Really, the darkest darks on this piece are on the eye that's in shadow on the other side of his face. That'd be the left eye there, and then that neck scarf. On the face itself, it's really delicately handled in how the values transition and blend. And it's much more green than I was expecting. It's one where you glance at this painting and you think that, oh, there's going to be a lot of red, a lot of magenta. There's really not. There's much more greens, greens that don't have much blue to them. So using yellow ochre and that ivory black is really helpful to get some nice low chroma greens that are really feel natural with how this was painted. And it's a nice trick that I'll be taking moving forward, working on my own portraits, kind of avoiding those higher chroma colors like the cadmiums, things like that, for these more muted earth tones. Once you put them all together, you definitely get something that's more realistic without having to fight as much. So still working on getting that definition on the cheekbone and towards the side of the nose. Kind of getting that upper eyelid on the right eye. I'd been fighting with that for a while. The tip of the nose has a really delicate shift in value and where that highlight is, especially since he's in profile. And the lighting that was used when Liszt was actually sitting for this portrait, it's pretty obvious that it was rather dark and coming from the right side of the face. And you really have to pay attention on this one, because if you're just glancing at it, you'll miss some of these turns of form that happen on the nose. And I was struggling with that for a while. As you can see, the nose is looking a little weird there, especially at the tip. I ended up jumping back in, I think you'll see it in a second, and pushing things around by moving the background a bit to get the kind of much harsher shadow that's right at the edge of the nose where it intersects with the background. And that seemed to help get that definition. Overall, this was a fun one for me. Feel like I learned a lot, especially about painting in broader color fields for the face and getting those harmonies to start with before I start chasing down the individual hues that I'm seeing. This one is a single session so far. I think I'm going to do another pass on it once it's dry, probably in a couple days, and I'll do a recording of that as well. One of the challenges that I had with this is that since it is small, it's 6x8, and I included the whole head as well as his chest, it's definitely gets fairly small once you start working on the eyes, things like that. So it was a bit of a balance between painting an overall impression and getting lost in some of these technical details. I used a couple small brushes, and I tried to force myself to stay away from them. It's easy to start just kind of drawing a representation of what I think should be there rather than making an accurate copy once you start to go that small. So next master copy that I work on, I think I may try and go a bit bigger, maybe 9x12, or just zoom in on the face more to get some better practice with some of that facial anatomy that is kind of difficult to do when you're working this small. I'm not quite sure what the size of the original painting is here, but I know it's much larger than what I'm working on, obviously. So that's something to keep in mind when you're picking what to work on, is that you may be working much smaller than how it was painted, and some of those details may become unnecessarily difficult. So best thing is to, instead of start working with 00 riggers and things like that, is to step back and make sure you're still getting the impression of detail rather than um, getting focused and lost on those details, especially when you have the reference on something high res like an iPad where you can zoom way in and see where you're missing things. Remember that you're working on a physical painting. It's not zoomable. It's going to be what it is. So I have to do that a lot, of remembering that although I'm painting this from a foot away, people are going to look at it from 3, 4, 5 feet away, 10 feet away if you're looking at a much bigger painting. And so taking that time to periodically step back and see, how does this painting look from a reasonable viewing distance, that's also helped me a lot, especially on some of the plein air work that I do. I really enjoy that a lot, and sometimes it's easy to get so lost in painting that you forget to take 10 steps back and realize, oh, this is actually pretty good. So still refining some of those details, just trying to make sure the form on the face is turning correctly. That nose is starting to look pretty decent. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this. Obviously, there's some issues with it. It's not a fantastic copy. Some of those proportions and angles, especially on the chin, are not quite right. The chin should really be leaning further to the left, really tucked under that nose more. But I missed it on the drawing, and I did my best to push it back where I could. But always something to learn. Goal here for me isn't to create a perfect one-to-one copy of this painting, but to instead kind of learn what somebody who's an accomplished artist put in and left out when they painted a portrait, and take that forward into my own work. Cleaning up those lips. At some point when I was painting those, I ended up extending them out way further than my drawing was. I had lost the lines on the underpainting and wasn't paying attention enough to the reference, so let that drift away from me a little bit. Always a good idea to be checking your reference or the model whenever you're working, and not just get completely lost in the painting itself. Then that's where things start to drift and look weird. Cleaning up the red on the chin there. It's really pronounced in the painting. It's one of the biggest pops of color there, and one that's challenging to get right because it's really defined by the surrounding skin tone. It's not nearly as bright as you'd think. So if you paint it too bright of a red, it really just looks unnatural. But if you can get it muted down and blended in with the skin tones, then it'll set off and look correct. So that was a fun challenge. There's a lot of color areas like that on this. Well, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I plan on trying to put out more videos, working on outdoor paintings, plein air landscapes, doing more portraits, hopefully doing some more master copies, and everything in between. So thanks for stopping by, and enjoy.